Hello, Senior Stoner fans. It's the real Senior Stoner back at you for your Dabex and Dabex Incredible Glass Dab of the Day. We're going to have a monster hit today. I need one. Thanks for joining me. It's Tuesday. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, please hit the subscribe button, send a like my way, and I respond to all comments. Well, today what I'm going to talk about is something I do a lot of: self-therapy. What is self-therapy first? Well, self-therapy can have a lot of definitions. Generally, the term refers to psychotherapy that we can conduct on ourselves without the intervention of an assistant or therapist. Let's look at some ways that I've found I can help myself. Well, it's kind of self-counseling, self-help therapy, where you're trying to help yourself. It's not confusing because there are no strict rules around the definition of what I'm doing. So self-help versus self-therapy versus self-counseling, it all refers to the practice of examining our behavior and using methods of free thinking, free association, therapeutic methods to help ourselves. Counseling is also usually short-term, whereas therapy becomes more long-term. But regardless of the terminology, what we want to do is we want to talk about the fact that self-help, self-therapy, they're all related, and what we need to do is find ways to control the difficulties that we have in life, find ways to manage the stress we have in life, find ways to tap down the pain we have in life. So how can you do self-therapy, and does it work really? Well, you can practice it on your own for anxiety, for depression. You don't need any formal qualifications, but therapists are always available because they're the resource that we need to use when we might be experiencing stronger feelings of anxiety or depression that we can't help ourselves. So what are the things that I do in helping myself? Well, I start to think about what I'd like to achieve. So am I thinking about a technique for managing anxiety? Am I thinking about how to help myself deal with pain? There really is no right answer. What you're looking to do simply is understand more about your problem or your goal. So to work towards your goal, you need to develop an understanding of your problem. And you have to kind of study your feelings and behaviors more closely than you did in the past. So you need to think about how you would describe the feeling or behavior that you have an issue with. You try to recall what you felt like when this was happening, okay? Trying to make an objective approach to the situation. And maybe even keep a record of the feelings that happen before the behavior pops up. Is there a pattern? Are there certain situations that always lead to that problem? Maybe we want to identify and explore self-talk. So what that means is talking to yourself. I do it a tremendous amount of time. And when you're doing it, you can uncover an amazing amount of things that you didn't think you knew about yourself. You challenge your irrational thoughts. You replace the irrational thoughts with the right beliefs and thoughts. And then you practice and practice and practice. Because what you want to do in these situations of self-help is you want to face the trigger head on that causes you to have stress or depression. And as we practice and develop strengths against those negative impulses, it's a way of us managing our responses. And guess what? We have to go through an entire protocol because there are so many things you can uncover during self-therapy. Talk about anxiety for a second. What would be the triggers for your anxiety? What would be any 3, 4, 5, any amount of physical symptoms that you experience when you feel anxious? And what are the thoughts you tend to have when you're feeling anxious? What do we do to cope with that anxiety? So we've asked ourselves questions all the way from where it triggers to how do we solve it. And you also want to challenge your negative thoughts in what I call self-therapy. Anxiety and depression often cross paths because they're both brought about by negative thought. So how do you take yourself and provide an alternative perspective to help yourself cope or reframe the situation? Maybe we're not thinking correctly. Is there substantial evidence for the thought that I have that's causing this problem? Is there evidence to the contrary of my thought? Am I attempting to interpret the situation without all the evidence and just go boing? What would another person, maybe a friend, think of this situation? And if I looked at the situation positively, how would it be different? And will this issue matter 1 year from now? Will it matter 5 years from now? You see, challenging our subjected or distorted thought patterns is a logical step to help us recognize where the cycle of anxiety comes from. It's helpful to us to realize that we might be catastrophizing or overgeneralizing or magnifying even the smallest situation. Cognitive distortion happens to a tremendous amount of people. What happens is it can be crippling because those people who have this distortion problem, everything's blown out of proportion. The smallest problem is an atomic bomb going off. So, when you feel that you're at a risk of catastrophizing, when you feel the onset of anxiety or unnaturally bad moods, maybe we gotta ask ourselves, what are we really worried about? How likely is the worry to come true? Is there evidence to support what we're thinking? If the worry does come through, what's the worst that could happen? If the worry comes true, what's most likely to happen? And if the worry comes true, what are the percentages you're going to be okay? You see, once you ask yourself these questions, you become the inner critic of your own questions. So the self-therapy journey really is a cyclical one, like we talk about the Ferris wheel, having two things on the top always when you go over, hope and opportunity. That's what self-therapy is all about. It's taking yourself into a bad situation with triggers of internal or external situation. And you know what? Helping you guide you to less anxiety and less stress. You see, there are so many different forms of self-help, self-therapy. You can relax, do relaxation therapy, you can do cognitive restructuring, you can do anxiety management techniques, you can do self-help for depression, all kinds of things. But what matters the most, I think, here, self-therapy I'm calling it, is that a lot of these things are driven by social anxieties. A lot of these problems we have are driven by our OCD or our post-traumatic stress. So the root causes of a lot of the things we have going on may be beyond self-therapy. What self-therapy can do or has done for me, it doesn't solve, fix, cement new arms, legs, bones, change your mental health. Doesn't do that. What self-therapy does for me is it buys me time. It buys me time. And what I mean by that is it gives me the ability to have the trigger, unfortunately, and go through whatever I'm going to go through. But then I take a second look. That's my self-therapy. And even a third look and a fourth look to try to kick myself in the butt or hit myself in the nose and say, wait a second, Senior Stoner, you're seeing this incorrectly. You see, what I believe is that a tremendous amount of our stresses in life are brought about by ourselves because we read things incorrectly. I had childhood trauma. That's my thing. And because of that, I see things differently than some people do. You all have your own individual triggers brought about by your own individual experiences in life. This is what self-therapy can do. It can help you know better what's causing the problem. This is the Real Senior Stoner, and I truly hope everybody enjoyed today's discussion on self-therapy. It's important. I think more people need to do it and be aware that you can help yourself. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Please send a like, and I respond to all comments. Sugar, don't dig. Here we go. Ready for the big hit? Sugar, don't dig. Thank you. Here we go. Oh my. Here we go. I've loaded this bowl to the brim. Because with Dabex, Chris, I called him. He says you got to fill it to the brim. And it is performing extremely well. Thanks for watching. It's the Real Senior Stoner. Cheers, everybody.